Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Sunday recap where today I will be reviewing a fairly formulaic Belgian Grand Prix, but it did certainly have some stories to tell and have its moments. So, let's go straight into the race report. So, the race got underway and Lewis Hamilton defended the lead from Valtteri Bottas going into the first corner, whilst Max Verstappen was under pressure from Daniel Ricciardo, and Daniel Ricciardo attempted to get past the Red Bull and almost managed to get him, but in the end Max did stand his ground and eventually defend the position. Whilst towards the middle of the points, you had Pierre Gasly, and here you see him making an absolutely fabulous overtake on Sergio Perez through Eau Rouge. I mean, how brave is that to actually go for it through Eau Rouge and actually make it stick through the fastest part of the track? I mean, literally, there was barely any space as he went through, and it was round the outside. For me, it was more impressive than the Alonso Webber overtake in Spa 2011. Webber's overtake on Alonso, because this was round the outside and had to actually work more for it. Pierre Gasly was on a charge. He was on the alternate strategy. He was starting on the medium tyres as opposed to the softs, which looked to be quite a good race start. He then passed Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc had made a great start, getting up to 9th, but then he starts to fall back down the order as Ferrari really started to get punished for their lack of straight line speed. But then we had a big accident. Antonio Giovinazzi went off into the barrier at the Fagnes chicane, on the exit of the Fagnes chicane, and he bounced across the track, and a wheel bounced across the track as well, and then George Russell collected that errant wheel from Giovinazzi's car, which put him into the wall in avoidance. Really unlucky for George Russell. Absolutely nothing he could have done. And he was basically scooped up by someone else's incident. But this brought out the safety car. It was really surprising and shocking, to be honest, that there was no red flag. There was so much debris across the track. And of course, Spa is not the place that you want there to be puncture. Thankfully, both drivers did get out of the crash. I mean, there wasn't really any massive impact for either of them. So both drivers got out of their cars okay. Pretty much everyone pitted bar Gasly and Perez. It was a really bad timing for a safety car for Pierre Gasly because of his strategy, and it put him kind of on the back foot. Sergio Perez, it was a bit of an odd decision for him not to pit, because he was on the soft tyre. Why he didn't pit like everyone else, I don't know. But here you have Daniel Ricciardo getting past Pierre Gasly who was yet to stop, and immediately followed by Alex Albon, who got ahead of Esteban Ocon in the pit stops under the safety car. I mean, that must have been because Ocon may have had to double stack behind Ricciardo, which obviously would have cost him time. And then here you have Pierre Gasly making his way past Sergio Perez, I believe, because both then in the end did pit. Sergio Perez obviously pitted quite early, and that kind of destroyed his race. And then Pierre Gasly pitted quite late, obviously, because of his time. But it really was a poor timing of a safety car. But here you had Pierre Gasly. He was on a charge towards the end of the race. As you can see, he was passing. As you can see, he was passing Perez, and then he managed to get past Lance Stroll in the end for P8, and that was as high as he could have got, really. You have to think that it could have been quite a lot higher had it not been for the poorly timed safety car. But then there was battling at the end. You had Ocon attacking Albon, and he managed to get through on the last lap. Lando Norris almost managed to get through. Whilst at the front, there were concerns about tyres. Both Mercedes up front made mistakes at the bus stop chicane. And there was people were wondering, were we going to have a repeat of Silverstone? But we didn't, and Lewis Hamilton took a dominant victory at the circuit to Spa-Francorchamps, taking the win ahead of Max Verstappen. I don't know why it's showing these Spanish Grand Prix results. It should not be showing that. It should be showing the right, I don't know why that is, but considering that I did make sure to update the results, that doesn't actually appear that a lot of the results have updated. So I'm going to have to read you the results for this one. I mean, apologies for the technical issues, but these things do happen sometimes. Actually, I think I can get the results up. I can get the results up. But it was Lewis Hamilton who took the race victory. In Spa. Why is it not updating? It should be updating. This is not... Apologies for the technical problems here. It should... But the issue should be fixed now, and there we are. So it was Lewis Hamilton who took the race victory ahead of Valtteri Bottas in second. Max Verstappen finished in third ahead of Daniel Ricciardo in fourth. A great drive from Daniel Ricciardo. He almost managed to get past Max Verstappen in the dying laps. Then you had Esteban Ocon finishing in 5th place, ahead of Alex Albon in 6th, Lando Norris in 7th. He couldn't quite manage to get past Albon. Pierre Gasly got drive of the day, and to absolutely no surprise, in 8th with the 2 racing points. A disappointing race for them in the end, finishing in 9th and 10th. Danny Kvyat just missed out on points in 11th, and then he finished out of Kimi Raikkonen in 12th. A reasonable race for him in the Alfa Romeo. Then he had Ferrari. Pretty much every time they were seen, they were being overtaken on a straight. No straight on speed. I will be discussing this in the midweek show next week. But surely this settlement that they had with the engine, whatever it was, which hasn't been publicised that much, surely that is not the only reason for this massive... for what is being rumoured that Ferrari were doing that was out of the regulations. Surely you don't lose 2 seconds through that sort of a ruling. But then you had Grosjean, Latifi, Magnussen. The retirements were Giovinazzi, Russell, and Carlos Sainz never got started in the race. It was a real shame for him. He could not get started due to an exhaust problem. Apparently it might have been an issue related to the turbo. But that's the result of the Belgian Grand Prix. And now, before we go into the team-by-team review, let's go through the feeder series races, which we saw take place this morning. And once again, Formula 2 saw a very exciting race. It has been a really exciting season in Formula 2 this year. At least at the start of the race, it was Roy Nissany who was on reverse grid pole. But Ticktum and Schwartzman both got really good starts. And Ticktum initially took the lead. But then Nissany struck back. And then there was drama. In the title battle. As you can see, Yuki Tsunoda tapping Callum Aylott into a spin, and he stalled the engine and was out of the race. I mean, I'm not really sure that was all 100% Tsunoda's fault. I mean, I mean, Eilert had to kind of back off because Lundgaard went across the chicane ahead, and then obviously Eilert had to back off in avoidance. I thought Tsunoda's penalty was a little bit harsh, and then that brought out the safety car, and the safety car came in, and then you had Dan Ticktum having a passing attempt on Nissany, but then there was contact going into their com, and then Nissany was sent into the wall, and it was such a shame for him after a race that looked like it had such promise for him, and he was out of the race. Dan Ticktum was not happy. He also lost out to Schwartzman in all the scuffle, and he clearly had some car damage. Because at the restart, he was struggling. As you can see, here he is getting passed by Louis Delatrez, and he was basically a mobile chicane for the remainder of the race, and that was what a lot of the remainder of the race consisted of. As you can see, here he is locking up going into the final chicane, which allowed Mick Schumacher a run before Guan Yu Zhu managed to get past in quite dramatic fashion before the high-techs followed through. As you can see, there was an incident involving Marino Sato. He was tagged by Jehan Daruvala going into the final chicane. And then, here, as you can see, Dan Ticktum holding up the two high-techs who both eventually got through. But he did eventually drop out of the points, did Ticktum. But Robert Schwartzman, once he took the lead, he never looked back, and he took the win. And crucially, because of that result, he now, and Eilert not scoring any points, he now takes the lead of the drivers' standings. It was Robert Schwartzman that won the race ahead of Mick Schumacher in second. Guan Yu Zhu finished in third place ahead of Nikita Mazepin, Luca Giotto, Louis Delatrez. Christian Lundgaard finished in seventh in the end, despite his first lap off. And then Artem Markelov got his first point of the season, finally, in the end. He had a real struggle of a season thus far, but he finally got his first point. Then you had Yuki Tsunoda finishing in ninth after a time penalty, with Dan Ticktum rounding out the top 10. Jury Vips doing a great drive, fighting his way through the field after stalling on the grid, finishing in 11th. Great job from him. In the driver's standings, Schwartzman leads Eilert by 10 points. Yuki Tsunoda is now in this fight, 21 points behind. You can't count out Mick Schumacher yet, who had his best weekend of the season. Then you had Nikita Mazepin, who's 31 behind, with Guan Yu Zhu in 6th place, 40 points behind. Then you have Lundgaard, who's dropped to 7th, Delatrez, Ticktum and Drugovic. The day kicked off with the Formula 3 race. It was Richard Verschoor who had reverse grid pole, and he started on pole position for this race. And at the start of the race, Sargent managed to get up into second place from third on the grid, and he was right behind Verschoor. And in the early laps, he was hounding the MP Motorsport car before eventually managing to get past, whilst there was driver Jack Dillon once again having issues with other drivers, getting a puncture. Picking up a puncture, we didn't quite actually see how he got that. But Logan Sargent eventually managed to get past Richard Verschoor, but then there was an accident behind as Pierre-Louis Chauvet went into the wall at Le Com, which put him out of the race and brought out the virtual safety car in the end. But on the restart, Pourchaire was holding third, but he managed to get past Richard Verschoor. And Verschoor was really struggling for race pace. And then Lawson managed to get through, as did Smolia. And then Lawson had an attack on Pourchaire and managed to get through into third place, with Smolia following suit. Whilst behind Alex Peroni, who was looking like he might score points, was hit by Ollie Caldwell going into their com, and then that dropped him out of the points. But Frederick Vesti was catching up to Logan Sargent, and he was really keeping him honest. But in the end, he was standing his ground, whilst Oscar Piastri behind had a time penalty for passing off, for allegedly gaining advantage by going off the track. On the exit of Radion, he had a swapper, which put him off the track. And the stewards judged him to have gained an advantage. I thought that was a little bit harsh, but he got the penalty. It only really cost him one place in the end. But it was Logan Sargent who fended off Frederick Vesti to take the victory in the end. And he retakes the lead of the drivers' standings. It was Sargent that took the win ahead of Frederick Vesti in second. Liam Lawson finished in third place ahead of Alexander Smolio, who had a good race in fourth. Then you had Pourchaire finishing in fifth ahead of Piastri in sixth. He did finish. His time penalty only dropped him one position in the end. Then you had Vashaw, who would have been disappointed with 17th. Then you had Zenderi, Beckman and Fernandez rounding out the top 10. And in the drivers' standings, it's Sargent who leads the way from Piastri with a 7-point gap. David Beckman is 40.5 points behind. Actually, only half a point ahead of Liam Lawson. And Lawson is only 5 points ahead of Pourchaire. That's going to be an interesting battle for fifth. But you can't help but feel that this is between Sargent and Piastri now. And this could easily go to the final race in Mugello, the second race in Mugello. So now let's review the Belgian Grand Prix with a team-by-team review of today's Grand Prix. And this, once again, will be done in reverse Constructors' Championship order. Tough race for them. Obviously, George Russell was taken out early. Nicholas Latifi had quite a quiet race, and he finished in 16th place. Another bad race for Haas. We barely saw much of them today, with Romain Grosjean finishing in 15th and Kevin Magnussen finishing last out of all the finishers. Tough race for them. Although Kimi Räikkönen did show pace, they were the fastest out of the bottom three teams were Alfa Romeo, and even on the pace of Ferrari on many occasions during the race. Obviously, Antonio Giovinazzi crashed out of the race early on, but still they have a way to go. The Ferrari-powered teams did struggle here. AlphaTauri are proving to have a very solid midfield car, and once again a good drive from Pierre Gasly despite his strategy being messed up by the safety car. Danny Kvyat would have been disappointed to just miss out on points, but AlphaTauri have scored in 6 out of the 7 races that we've had so far this year. They've had a good start. They've had a good season so far. One of the stars of the day, Renault, finishing in 4th and 5th, their highest points haul ever. Of course, different point systems have to be taken into account with that, but their best result in many, many years, finishing in 4th and 5th, and just missing out on the podium, with Daniel Ricciardo really sending it, in his words, on the final lap, finishing in 4th and just missing out on the podium, with Esteban Ocon finishing in 5th. They have a good car in the straight line, and I think they are going to be very confident heading into Monza. But wow, what can be said? They are still in 5th in the Constructors, but Renault are now right behind them. And honestly, how have they lost 2 seconds in over a year? In just a year? How have they lost that much time compared to last year? The comparison to last year's, comparing the 2 qualifying laps, is just staggering. Never do you have such a visually noticeable difference. Have I ever seen such a visually noticeable difference in straight line speed? But of course, I think they are set for a home embarrassment next week, considering that Monza is going to expose their weaknesses the most. It can be said they have kind of underachieved so far this year. Finishing 9th and 10th is probably not where they wanted to finish. Perez fell victim to a strategy mistake, and they also didn't seem to have the pace of the front of the Renaults or the McLarens. So not a great day for them, but they still sit 4th in the Constructors. Lando Norris was carrying the weight of the team in this race after Carlos Sainz could not start, which would have been disappointing for him. And he finished in 7th place, so a good day for him. Almost finished in 6th place. They would have been a little bit disappointed not to be on terms with Mercedes, but they weren't expecting to be either. So Verstappen finished in 3rd. He did keep them honest throughout, but of course Mercedes were able to manage their tyres. Alex Albon finished in 6th. He will be a little bit disappointed with that, but he did show some improvements this weekend. And then, of course, we have Mercedes. Another 1-2 finish. And Lewis Hamilton once again dominates the race. Mercedes are looking on for the Constructors' standings and obviously for the Drivers' standings as well. And Mercedes now have a massive lead in the standings. They have a 106-point lead. And in the drivers' standings, Lewis Hamilton has extended his lead. He has a 47-point lead now. That is almost 2 race victories back to Max Verstappen, who still holds 2nd in the standings. Valtteri Bottas is in 3rd. Actually, exactly 50 points behind Lewis. Then Alex Albon has moved up into 4th place. Charles Leclerc remains in 5th with Lando Norris level with him for 6th in the standings. And then you have Lance Stroll in 7th on 42 points. And Daniel Ricciardo has moved up to 8th in the standings. Sergio Perez is 9th with Esteban Ocon in the top 10 in 10th. Carlos Sainz, he has been frustrated with this season. Despite having a quick car, he's had a lot of bad luck so far this year. And that included today when he wasn't able to start the race. Then you have Pierre Gasly in 12th. He's moved ahead of Sebastian Vettel, who drops to 13th. Then you have Nico Hülkenberg, who's 6 points that he got in the 70th anniversary race, sees him in 14th. Then you have Giovinazzi, Kvyat and Magnussen, with Raikkonen, Latifi, Russell and Grosjean yet to score a point. But that is it from the Belgian Grand Prix weekend. We will see you on Thursday for the midweek recap, where we will be reviewing some of the events of the Belgian Grand Prix and previewing the Italian Grand Prix next week. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.